we're going to kick off now. So, big welcome. This is the series of webinars that we run here at ProdPad. They're called our Fireside series. So, welcome to the Fireside. We've been running these things for years now. So, every month for several years, you can go back and actually see our past recordings on prodpad.com/webinars, where we've had experts from all over the place. And it's always with a focus on those experts and their insights. It's a focus on learning and sharing and picking up from their experiences. So today is going to be recorded. You'll have a copy of this afterwards, and it's going to be shared with you. You can share it around to your colleagues, and you will have a chance to ask questions. So jump into the Q&A area to drop any questions that you have now or later on as this conversation evolves. And we will do our best to get to those. You should be able to use the Q&A to upvote other people's questions as well. So we'd love to see which ones are most popular, what's resonating, and we'll pick up from there. A little bit about ProdPad before we kick off. So ProdPad is a tool that we've built ourselves, myself and my co-founder Simon. We were both product people, and we needed tools to help us keep track of the product work we were doing, you know, all those experiments, all that feedback, all the stuff that we're trying to figure out whether we should build or not. It was a place to organize that and give us a sense of control and understanding about what's in our backlog and which things are going to have the biggest impact. It created like the single source of truth for us as we built this tool originally. And so now it's being used by thousands of teams around the world. It helps give transparency into your product process so that it makes it really clear as to why decisions are being made and what things are going to be most impactful for the company as a whole, because it connects back to your overarching goals. We have a free trial. You can jump in, and you even have access to what we call our sandbox mode, which is preloaded with example roadmaps and OKRs and experiment and other pieces. So you can see how it all sort of fits together. And our team is made up of product people. We were founded by product people. We've got lots of product people within the team. So, you know, give it a try and give us your feedback. We'd always love to hear from you. And enough about us. Let's introduce our guest. We've got Christian Idiodi joining us here today. Everybody say hi to Christian.
Hello.
Christian is a partner at Silicon Valley Product Group and is a leading expert in product management and in transformation. He spent decades helping teams from startups to giants like Microsoft build world-class products. He's known for cutting through the noise, challenging old habits, and equipping teams for real change. He's the co-author of Transformed and hosts the Product Therapy podcast, sharing real talk on what it takes to make lasting change in product organizations. And today he's here to talk to us about managing up, influencing up, how to get buy-in for your org-wide product transformation. Everybody say hi. Hi, Christian. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my highest honor. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. It's great to have you here. And I just saw somebody raising their hand. If anybody raising your hand, if you've got questions, drop it into the chat or into the Q&A, and that way we can pick those up and answer them as we go. But to start with, Christian, I just want to ask, like when you walk into a company that's stuck in old habits, what are the first signals that tell you that some sort of this product operating model is needed?
Wow. There's a lot in terms of symptoms or indications that the way companies work may not be yielding the results they want. You know, I
Yeah.
typically kind of joke with my kids about like, how do you know a company needs help? So I'm like, well, when I'm walking through the company and the best ideas in the company are stuck in the hallways of the company
Mm.
and not in the hands of their customers. You know, it's
Oh,
kind of like a
interesting.
time for change. It's kind of this
Yeah.
brilliance in so many companies of all the cool things they could do. But you look at their actual product and it's not a reflection of that brilliance. But truly, you know, if you think about some of the symptoms, you could think about engineers not doing anything more than building things, product people feeling like project people, design being downstream. When companies complain about too much tech debt, misaligned priorities, too many priorities, lack of focus, things
Yeah.
just take too long, heavy opportunity costs, innovation cycles. You know, we have 50 engineers, the other company has 10, but they are running cycles all over us. We're not getting to value faster enough. All of these things, you're shipping a lot of things, but you're not making a dent or impact they are all indications, not of a problem in what you do, but a problem or opportunity in how you do
Mhm.
it. And that's for me kind of a big indication of a need to kind of change how you do things. And to be clear, I always joke about the blame cycle. When you see a culture that is very good at blaming other groups for things not working, it's also another indication there as well, a signal.
Yeah, I think you hit something on the head there. All these brilliant ideas within the hallways, right? And this is what I see. You see teams of people, like companies full of brilliant people, and each one has this clarity on how they think they would go and solve things. And yet, together, the company just seems to be running against itself.
Yes, yes, quite common. And I cannot understate how common that is in so many companies. It's never for lack of brilliant people or ideas, is the ability to translate that into meaningful solutions
Yeah.
for their customers that they're challenged with.
So the real magic isn't in having those ideas, it's in getting the team organized enough to do something with it, which
Yeah,
I imagine the
yeah.
larger the company, the harder that challenge is.
Well, so they might think.
Okay, all
So they
right.
might think, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, the larger the company, the more opportunity to solve problems. But it's not actually done that way. And we
Yeah.
can talk more about that. But it's often the difference between an empowered environment and one that is led with control.
Right, okay. So that's really interesting. What do you mean by an empowered environment versus one that's led by control?
So if and I explain this to CEOs all the time, a company might say, we have 50,000 employees, you know, and you look at smaller companies innovating faster, driving value faster, getting things out the door. And when you look at the culture, I try to explain this to a CEO. I say, okay, you've got 50,000 employees, maybe you've got 1,000 leaders,
Mhm.
49,000 individual contributors. In a typical command and control environment, what tends to happen is the company has a big problem or opportunity. All those 1,000 leaders, they start thinking about all the things we should do, different strategies, and then they hand over to the 49,000 people they have in the company a list of roadmap items, futures, projects, things to go do.
Mhm.
Now, these leaders could be very smart, brilliant leaders. Let's ensure, give them all the credit. Let's say all of those leaders have 5 ideas each that are fantastic.
Yeah.
That's 5,000 amazing ideas that they now prioritize into projects for 49,000 people in the company to go do. That's a traditional model, cascades down.
Mhm.
In an empowered model, you're kind of flipping that upside down. You're saying, as a company, we've identified a problem. We have 49,000 smart, talented people. And I like that Steve Jobs quote. Why hire smart people to tell them what to do?
Yep.
We hire smart people to tell us what's possible. So I'm going to give that problem to 49,000 people to think about, to discover solutions to that. If they all had 5 ideas each, that's like 250,000 plus ideas we're going to try as a company. And the
Yep.
job of the 1,000 leaders is to create an environment for them to try, experiment, deliver, and launch those solutions. Are you seeing the difference in that model? So it's often, kind of this legacy control model that passes on projects to teams versus the empowered model where you're saying, I'm pushing the decisions of what we
Mhm.
do to the people that are closest to the problem, closest to technology, closest to the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a clue in the name, right? These are knowledge workers who are working with
Yeah,
companies. That's what an organization is a collection of knowledge workers. Let them use their knowledge, right? They're
yeah,
there because they have eyes and ears and they can see what's going on in the space around them.
yeah. But Janna, that's harder than you think because many leaders were trained in an industrial revolution and in a factory model.
Yeah,
So all of those models, which are very archaic today,
yeah,
are used to leverage efficiency in the hands of people than in the minds of people.
yeah,
So organizational playbooks are designed to
yeah,
drive efficiency of using hands than using minds. So you're kind of calling out knowledge workers, but we're still using legacy factory worker
yeah.
type of techniques and processes in how we manage.
Yeah, absolutely. And you call it, legacy factory way of working and that sort of stuff, right? Which makes me think of like the old days, right? But surely that's all dying out now. Is it just the old companies that do this, or do new companies fall foul of this way of thinking too?
I wish I could make the argument that there's just some kind of this is old school, new school kind of trend. But remember, uh, we are still going to school
Hmm.
with institutions and teachers that learned in some factory model on how to create efficiency that are teaching these things down. That's the educational system. And then think about that in environments where your current leader or CEO today learned how to be a leader or CEO working in a company for 30 years.
Hmm.
And so they are teaching a whole generation how to write the business case and manage a project the way they managed things 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So I wish you could say that this is only limited to old legacy companies in terms of the thinking. It's pervasive in many companies because of the people that are leading those companies.
That's really interesting. And so, I mean, surely these people can see that there's a better way of working. What's holding them back to this old way of working? Is it just because that's what they're used to, or do they have some sort of preconceived notion that it's somehow better and more effective for the business?
Look, I I have not met, at least till today, in all of the work I have done around the world in any company where a leader, an executive team has told me all this stuff you're talking about is crazy talk. It doesn't make any sense. Oh, this product model nonsense. I don't understand how this is going to be better. I have not met a single executive yet that has chased me out of the room because I am saying something absolutely contrarian to their modeling in their head. I always say the product model is not new, but getting leadership to believe in it is actually very new. The
Mm.
reason most leaders don't adopt the product model is because they've never seen it before.
Ooh.
They've never lived it before. It's just sometimes they don't even know how their actions, their behaviors, their language, or their choices could help or hurt creating the environment for good work to occur. It's like I'm talking to a product leader, a team the other day. It's like the leaders, I told the team to do discovery. Why are they not doing discovery? And the team is like, well, sir, you told us we are not allowed to talk to customers. And he said, why do you need to talk to customers? You need to do discovery, not waste your time talking to customers. This came from the leader. And you can kind of see like, oh, philosophically, I agree. We should do that discovery
Mhm.
thing. Makes a lot of sense. But practically, it's like, I didn't know me blocking you spending time with customers. Hot set, right? So it's kind of the number one reason I think most people don't get good leadership is because their leaders have not experienced good leadership. The number one reason most companies don't work this way is because their leaders have not worked this way before.
Yeah, and I can imagine that becomes a really big blocker to getting these things through. Like, does the
Yeah,
transformation work better? I assume if it's coming from the leaders versus from
that's
the
right.
knowledge workers, right?
Yes, of course it does. It's why many people are here. They're like, I buy into this, but my leader, my executives, oh, if only they did.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're getting to the crux of what we are talking about, which is okay. So we're here in this company, and actually, who here is hearing this from their own company? Let us know in the chat. Are you working for a company where you feel like you are working in this old operating model, you want to be working in this new product operating model, and it's the leadership that it's difficult to get the message across to? Who's feeling that right now? And Christian, to you, I mean, what do you say to somebody who's in this position who feels like they can see what's going wrong? They understand that it's working better in other companies. Maybe they've read the books, they've been in a better company, but they're trying to figure out how to communicate that upwards.
Yeah. Um, I spend a lot of time with CEOs or senior executive teams in many companies. And in many cases, companies bring me in. It could be a head of product, a VP, senior leader, and they're like, look, maybe I get it. I need to get all these people in my organization to get it as well.
Yeah.
And people often ask me, what do I say in those sessions? How do I get a CEO and an executive team? And I kind of after the introduction of that kind of way, I typically am always very clear. Right? If I'm talking with a CEO and executive team, I say very clearly, look, a company cares about what the CEO cares about. A company cares about what this executive team cares about. And so I say to them, what do you care about?
Hmm.
And they say, well, what do you mean? I say, well, what are the most important things to you? And them, oh, we need to grow the company, we need to drive revenue, we need to win the competition. And so I say to the executive team, okay, who wakes up every day? Let's say, sometimes I might even tease them like, I am going to guess that I know a problem you will always have. And they're like, what is this? And I'm like, you're going to want to grow revenue. Is there going to be
Great
ever a
guess.
time in your history you don't want to grow revenue? They're like, of course. I'm like, okay. So even when you've grown revenue this year, you know what you're going to want to do next year? Grow revenue some more. And I say, who wakes up every day in your company to grow revenue? And you could kind of see executives looking at each other like, what do you mean? Like, I mean, who wakes up every day? This is the most important thing to you. You've got thousands of people who wakes up every day to do that. And like, it's not sales. They're like, the sales just sales. They capture value. It's not marketing. It's not operations. Who solves this problem? And I say, look, the most innovative companies have figured this out. They have a group of people that wake up every day to solve the problems that this group of people, these leaders, you all think are the most important right now. They have a fancy name for it. They call those people product teams. And I say the product model is predicated on really, one, enabling you to accomplish your goals, the things that are most important to you. And two, you kind of see this whole idea that you can push a lot of your innovation and your factor to people that have the skill sets to do it in a more meaningful way. And so in some ways, the way I get executives on board in kind of a buy-in is for them to kind of understand that this is not contrarian to the most ideal things they want. And what has gotten them successful may not get them successful in the future, because forget about the technology part, your customers are changing.
Mm-hmm.
Your customers are a whole generation of kids that look at digital or technology first in everything they do. And you have to be well equipped to compete in that way. So there is a narrative in there that I try to use to engage and inspire people. And please don't get it wrong. Some leaders in the room will be like, well, I mean, this might require a lot of change. This might move a lot of pieces. I mean, I don't really know if this is going to work. And my answer is always the same. I'm like, I don't know either. Do a test. Do a test. And I tell them
Yeah.
that all the time. I'm like, look, what does it have to look? Let's do a test. Let's see.
Ooh.
And the reality is, let me frame it to you. In the history of every company I have met that is not a startup, if they play back every single time they've done something innovative, most of the principles in the product model are reflected in it.
Hmm.
This is not new. Like when you explain to people, like, okay, think about the last time you did something great. Let's talk about the key elements of that. Oh my goodness, I remember that. When COVID hit, everybody rolled their sleeves up. We jumped in and we worked together. Okay, there
Mm-hmm.
was clarity of focus. Leaders were in the room. We removed all the obstacles, all the barriers. We didn't know. You start to kind of say, hold up. So what's the product model? I say, see, the secret ingredients in that magic you had? The product model is simply saying, why don't we make that what we do most of the time in most places, not what we do sometimes in some places?
And that's actually a really interesting example, right? Like when COVID hit, a lot of
Yes.
companies transformed the way they work. They wouldn't have called it a transformation. They
That's
just,
right.
I mean, it might be survivorship bias. The ones who survived, they all did something about it. What is it about these moments of pressure, these breaking points that cause companies to just suddenly start working in a more productive way?
Well, you're really getting down to the root of why companies transform.
Hmm.
And we've kind of seen these three big buckets. One, sometimes there is a genuine threat to their business, like COVID, you're describing survive or die. You did see companies survive, some companies died in that way. Or, Amazon is coming into our industry, or, Stripe
Yeah.
has launched something to compete with us. Some companies now threatening the existing way you've worked, right? And whether it's your Netflix blockbuster type of story in that way.
Yeah.
Uh, The second is sometimes there's some genuine excitement about what they could accomplish. There's some financial greed, like, oh my goodness, the best stocks in the world today are all companies that work in the product model.
Yeah.
If we work like that, we could be rich too. Don't be fooled. Companies kind of evaluate the financial rewards, the multiples that they can get in valuations, the exits they can immerse if they are treated as a SaaS company versus a service company or a tech company versus a consulting company. Those types of things do motivate people. But for many big companies, big enterprises I work with, they are just pissed off about the return on their investments in tech.
They're doing it out of spite.
They are like, holy Lord, we spend 50 million a year, 100 million on technology. We have 1,000 engineers. And I can't get anything out. Let me be clear, because I often tell people they kind of fail to understand the frustration in leadership or the patience of companies. I tell people all the time, when your company has something called an innovation lab, it literally means my product team is not innovating.
Hmm.
That's what it means. When a company goes out and the only time they can grow is by buying another company, they are realizing we cannot create that kind of value that that company did in the same amount of time. So acquiring a company is the best way to do it. When you have your leaders outsourcing every single thing they want to some third party group, buying so these are all most of the time reflections of a lack of management patience with the
Hmm.
product organization or your inadequacy to deliver value through your existing organization.
So that's really interesting. Do you come across companies where they've got an innovation lab, they're buying up innovative companies? They're obviously not innovating themselves, but there's people within that company who have been screaming, saying that they want to be innovative, but they're being held back by something.
Well, they mostly don't understand it.
Hmm.
They don't understand what's in their way of innovation. That's kind of for many leaders, they just cannot rationalize the blockers in their way of innovation. They just know that their current pathway takes too long, is so expensive, and often does not yield good results. And so if I am a traditional business, I'm like, my money is best spent somewhere else, because and that somewhere else will say to you, oh, you see, we can move faster. I mean, imagine if you got a proposal from some outside third party telling they can build your new app in 1 month, and your own internal head of product and tech people are like, we need 6 months to build it.
Hmm.
You're saying, at least I can get something in 1 month, right? And
Yeah.
and often innovation labs don't do anything meaningful in the world, because even after they've built it, you internally have to maintain it.
Hmm.
They just create a whole lot of tech debt, relearning. It's a technology transfer problem. So all very real things here, all very real things. Good question.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned one of the things you recommend is, look, if you're not sure, do a test.
Yes.
Like, what do you recommend as a starting point as a test? How do you figure out the scope of that test?
Well, I mean, we kind of call a test a pilot in some ways. And what happens is, remember, if a company is transforming from the project model to
Hmm.
the product model, they've always solved their problems by doing a project. We
Hmm.
want to build something, do that project. Want to build a new website project. So you now say, we want to transform. You know what most companies do? We do a transformation project.
Hmm.
You see, because that's their wiring of how they work. But
Yeah.
that's actually what you're trying to change. The best way to transform is actually like a product, not a project. You see, a project is like big bang, handoffs, racy, all of those charts, deliverable dates, that kind of stuff in some ways. A product is saying, we don't know the answer when we start. We need to discover, experiment, iterate, start small, kind of have an MVP, do a version one, roll out. That's a different mindset. So in this way here, because your transformation is a change, and when you do a change in the world, people are paranoid about, why are we doing this change? What's going to happen to me? What's in it for me? So these are all important things that you need to discover. So what we do is we do a pilot And a pilot means you might identify one business unit, one leader in there. You're going to coach them on the two biggest muscles you're trying to build in your culture in most transformation efforts, which are the muscles of deciding what to do and the muscles of how you do it. So, strategy and discovery. So, I'm coaching a leader on how to lead with context. I'm coaching a team on how to do discovery. The
Mhm.
clock is ticking. What your organization wants is outcomes, wants good outcomes, good solutions. Like, wow, look at what we did. We did that, yeah. We did that in record time. We tackled the risk in this. That's people often ask me, are you biased about what you pick? Absolutely. Because
Mhm.
what matters in your company is that you can actually deliver a good outcome quickly. So I need to demonstrate that. And what I'm doing in the pilot is I am uncovering the antibodies in the system that can reject things. I am addressing the gaps. I am
Mhm.
removing the obstacles, tackling the objections. I'm not doing it in big bang where I'm going to discover all of this at the same time. In a small group, I can address issues in there, respond better. If say your company you don't have any designers,
Mhm.
and you're like, to work in the product model, you need to have design. You're like, I can't hire 50 designers tomorrow. But if you start on a pilot, can you hire one? Can
Mhm.
you get one person in, you see? So you can start faster. You can address gaps faster. I don't need a strategy for every group, maybe just this one area. I don't need to get everybody on board. I just need this one area. And I'm going to learn and harvest success, harvest learning, model out behavior before I scale it across an organization.
That's a really brilliant way of putting it, right? I love the idea of piloting something and just starting really, really small. Now, let's say you're not in the leadership team, right? You're somebody else. You're one of the other 49,000 in the company. Is there a way for people within that team to sort of self-organize and pilot something themselves to prove that they're onto something?
Absolutely. You don't have to wait. This is the big aspect of where many people get choked up. Cultures where you feel like you've lost agency. This is happening to you. I cannot make change in some ways. Many of us in products know the market adoption curve, kind of like Jeffrey Moore's type of early
Mhm.
adopters, majority, and things here. Where many people say, my company, my whole organization has to change. What you're really trying to say is you want that big majority in the middle to change and adopt what you're trying to say. But there's really no business that starts with that.
Mm.
Same thing here. Your real focus should be on your early adopters, your early evangelist aspect of your population. That first 20%, that's what it's in every company. Champions of people that want to work in an empowered way, that want to make a dent, that want to have great outcomes. You are empowered. If you work as an individual in that group, you don't need the whole organization to change.
Nice. And that's empowering. That's an empowering thought.
Yeah.
So okay, we've got this group of 49,000 people, and there's a product person who wants to make this change. Who should they call up to their team? Who should they start winning over to their cause first?
Well, I mean, in kind of the idea I'm kind of putting is that you're not waiting for permission. You're
Hmm.
starting where you are and you want to build momentum. So most people, while they might argue with, okay, I don't have the agency or something, they might say, I don't have autonomy. I cannot make this change because it's bigger than me. The whole essence of what the product discipline is at its purest form is that you're solving a problem in a way that it's beneficial to the people that you're doing it for. We call them customers with a fancy name, and the business that we're serving, and they have something that they love, and that works for them. You got to find an outcome.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, what tends to happen is even when well-intended people do something great in a company, because of the bigger macro culture, they don't point to the principles that help them. They point to themselves. Say,
Hmm.
oh my goodness, Janna, how did that happen? I'm awesome. Look at what I did. I navigated all of this. I struggled. I pressed on. I was because the culture is already wired for heroism. They want heroes. It's
Hmm.
a mercenary culture. You want your bonus, your credit. So you lose sight that what you're really trying to model, what you're really trying to help your organization adopt are the principles that led to your success. Hey, the reason this was successful is because I did discovery before I did delivery. I minimized the risk upfront. I spent time with customers. I brought my engineer into the pro. These are things every other person can replicate, but they cannot replicate you. They cannot be
Yeah.
like, oh, well, now I have to have you on every project in order for things to work. So what I tell people is uh, uh, your results, your discovery, your ability to deliver outcomes are the biggest things that drive the credibility and trust in the product model in your company. And you want to attribute your success not to your heroism in doing that plot. Please don't get me wrong, you are courageous to do it. So we will give you that credit. But because you want meaningful change across your organization, you're going to give the credit in your story
Mhm.
for your success to the principles and environment that allowed it to happen. Because
That's actually
that's key.
That's actually really smart. It makes sense, right? If you're trying to get this early adopter and then over to the majority, right? You've got to
Yes,
show the majority that they too can be this hero, right? It wasn't
that's
your
right.
heroism, it was the fact that you followed a process that actually we
Yeah,
can all do if we all just sort of push in the same direction.
that's right.
So, I mean, I hear people saying that they want to do this sort of thing, but they're often saying things like, well, I can't start yet because we're in the middle of this big, we got all this tech debt, this redesign, refactor, whatever. Or we can't start yet because, we don't touch anything over Q3 or Q4 or whatever, right? Or we can't touch anything because, we're waiting for so and so to quit or to join or to whatever. I mean, what do you say to people who aren't taking ownership and starting now?
Yeah. Uh, there is an aspect to this that is courageous around change. I've even had companies that would tell me, uh, you know, what is the good time? Is it when we're in a crisis to transform or when we're in peaceful time? We don't want to rock the boat. We are
Mm.
making money now, like things are working well. And if you kind of think about the resistance to transformation, there are many executives in so many companies that have worked in the legacy way for a long time. In short, they've built their whole career on being efficient and effective in your current system. They know how to, that's how they got promoted. They know how
Hmm.
to navigate it, they know the politics, they know how to get approval, how to get funding, how to drive their projects.
Yeah.
Now you're kind of saying we need to shift a whole bunch of that. They're like, oh, what's wrong with what we're doing? I get my bonus every year. So there's some inbuilt complacency that can happen in some levels of like, why are we not going to change? Life is good. What is the need to change? Secondly, for many people, you're kind of calling out there are excuses baked in your system, but that is why you will need to transform. It's like a CEO telling me the other day, Christian, I don't have time for strategy. I said, that is exactly why you don't have time. Because you don't have a strategy. You're
Yeah.
working, you're doing all the things, you're unfocused. The only way to break the cycles of increasing your tech debt is by getting your engineers involved in deciding what to do. The only way to break the cycle, like all of these excuses, and they are all symptoms, not of what you do, but of how you do it. So
Hmm.
you want to find the areas of leverage today. They are not, understandably, some areas may be like, look, I've got commitments to go deliver. Yes, go deliver on those commitments.
Hmm.
But you're now saying to yourself, the next commitments I have, I will make sure I do discovery before I do delivery, because then I'll have a better delivery. You can do that. I'm going to get my engineers more involved in discovery. You can do that. I'm going to focus on an outcome, a problem to solve. I'm going to engage with my stakeholders differently. There are so many aspects, principles in the product model that you can start to adopt without permission or approval to
Hmm.
do so.
Yeah. And actually, you make a really good point there. Sometimes there's going to be things that you're committed to delivering, right? There's already been company-wide commitments or agreements that you've made upwards or whatever it is. But actually, there's no reason why you can't break off small pieces and just do little bits of product work, right?
Yeah,
Just taking little tiny bites off and then showing that each bit gets you that much more permission to go do something bigger the next time.
that's
Right?
right.
You're not saying like drop everything and just go into discovery mode and be like,
Right.
whatever we said we're going to deliver, we're not going to deliver, right?
That's right. Don't do that, because this is all about trust. Remember, it's a race to outcomes. The best thing you can do for your organization to adopt the product model is to deliver an outcome. I know it sounds crazy. Be like, what? How do I deliver an outcome if the system is not wired for that? Deliver as the smallest outcome you can
Hmm. Yeah.
in the environment you have, meaning solve a problem meaningfully, like point to something everybody understands. I'm
Yeah.
going to work on increasing sales. I'm going to work on driving profit, engagement, adoption, satisfaction, something measurable. And you're kind of saying, imagine if I did this every day.
Yeah.
That's all.
Absolutely. And you touched on something really important. It's that building trust,
Yeah.
right? It's showing
Yeah.
that, hey, you can change the way that you work and you're still getting as good, if not better, results. And
Yes.
ideally, hopefully able to articulate them, right? If you're
That's right.
changing your language around this, you're talking about, hey, look, this is what we went out to learn, this is what we did learn, and this is what we got out of it. And you're able to show this almost mini path of how you've gotten there, which then opens up possibilities to go forward a little bit faster, a little bit more
Right.
freely.
Right.
So, do you have any tips on framing or language to use when speaking to execs and managing this sort of this ask upwards?
Yeah. Unfortunately, many leaders don't care about how, the sausage is made in a company. They do care about outcomes, and they
Hmm.
do care about protecting their revenue, protecting their brand, protecting their customer, protecting fellow employees. Um, Most product people, and I don't know if we're helping or hurting, they like a lot of framework, process, big words, terminology, and things that many executives that may not have grown up in the product model may find it hard to rationalize. It's like, oh, you want to do discovery. What the heck does that mean? And is it a good thing for me? You
Hmm.
want to be product led, or you want to, tackle, like we have all this taxonomy and funny terms. I need a product vision and a product strategy. And I often have to coach people, you know, product speak for execs is really the language of how executive talks. They talk in a big, in an executive forum. They care about some very important things that there is no senior leader in your company that does not understand money.
Hmm.
I tell people, what solves all problem in a company? More revenue.
Money.
Just more money and more revenue. In some ways, they understand risk. They understand more customers. They understand retention. So I often try to limit my use of product terminology when I'm making requests. I don't kind of say, oh, you need to give me strategic context with a vision, a strategy, OKRs, objective. Just imagine they've never seen good in those things before.
Hmm.
What you're really trying to say is like, imagine how great a job I can do if I understood more of the context, if I had more clarity about where we're going. We call that vision. How we plan to get there. We call that strategy. What is important right now, how we measure success. Those are those OKR things. You see, it will be much better. We will get a better product if we tackle our risk.
Hmm.
Like, I'm not sure if people are going to buy this. I'm not sure if we can build this. I'm not sure if it's legal, compliant stuff. We call all of that stuff discovery. So, when I'm talking to executives, I use terms that leaders already care about.
Hmm.
Stop using terms that you care about. So you're going to say to somebody like, well, why do you need time to do this? There's a risk in doing it. My job is not to not do what you said. My job is to ensure that when I do it, it's done in a way that makes you happy and makes our customers happy. It's a risk because I don't know what that way is.
Yeah.
That's, see, now they are thinking to themselves, okay, so what do you need from me? Well, I need to understand what the real problem is, how you measure success with it, and then I need some time to go discover the best way to tackle that risk. You see, different from like, oh, I need discovery. You need to give me time for this. I need this from you. If I cannot do my work, if I don't have a good vision, your strategy sucks. I just see so many people because they have the words to describe what is missing or what leaders are not doing. It becomes a mental blocker for why they don't take action or why they don't communicate well to leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think product people are actually perfectly equipped to take this on, right? Think of it this
Yes,
way. You don't use product language at your customers. You go out
that's
and
right.
ideally you go talk to your customers and you do discovery. They don't call it discovery, but you do discovery with them.
That's right.
And then you find out how they talk and then you use their language back at them.
That's
Same
right.
thing, right? Your leaders are
Yes,
just stakeholders. They're customers of
yes,
sorts. And you can
yes,
do discovery on your leaders and then use their language back at them.
yes. That's right. That's exactly right.
And so, okay, I've heard companies who use things like OKRs and they talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk, right? And they've used OKRs and they're saying they're doing all this stuff. They love their outcomes, they love their discovery, but actually, they still want you to commit to a certain amount of work done by the end of the quarter, and they're not giving room for real discovery.
Yeah.
I feel like see, that's even worse than some companies who are working in the old school way, right? Using the old school terminology. How do you deal with companies like that?
It's a hard construct because I mean I joke with companies, they always tell me, oh, we tried OKRs and it really became something like, okay, this really sucks, you know?
I haven't
And
heard that one, but that
that's right,
rings
it
true.
didn't there's no adoption, no traction, it didn't stick after we did many iterations of it. And I was like, so why did you do OKRs? They say, what do you mean? That's what everybody's doing. You know, we watched a video on YouTube where Google said we did OKRs and that was our secret to our success. And I said, okay, do you have a culture like Google? They say, what do you mean? I said, do you work in empowered teams where you give them problems to solve and it's up to them to go? They're like, we think so. I mean, we give our teams like roadmaps and we allow them to do it. And I say, let me be very clear. OKRs are an empowerment tool. They're an alignment tool. As such, they're a cultural tool. This is not a tool for future teams. It's not a tool for delivery teams. It's the wrong type of thing because to be more pointed, you cannot have like in its purest form your traditional roadmap,
Mhm.
what by when, and then also have an OKR. Because an OKR is saying, this is what's important, increase revenue. Roadmap is saying what? Build me this by Monday. What do you think people are going to work on? Go work on the roadmap. You will never do your OKRs.
Yeah.
So the most important thing, if you really want to go there, is to change the environment. Focus on creating more empowered teams. Then if your question to me is, how do I communicate to those teams what they should be working on? Then I can be like, oh, we should try that OKR thing. Are you
Yes.
seeing? You see, it's not the OKR does not create the empowerment magically. You know, does not make the culture in some ways. It's just a tool used by empowered teams to communicate what teams should be working on and to measure outcomes.
Yeah. And it always comes back to the same thing, that iron triangle of project constraints, right? Time, scope, and cost, right? If
Yeah,
you're using any tool, I don't care whether it's roadmaps or OKRs or whatever, to say this thing, the scope, has to be done by this time, well, then cost or quality is going to give. And it's always
yeah,
quality, isn't it?
yeah,
Right?
that's right. Urgent always wins when competition with important. Urgent will always win.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right, that's some really good advice. So, when it comes to companies that are looking to get into this transformation, are there any sort of like industries or company type sizes that tend to do better and others that tend to be worse? Or is this applicable across any sort of product org?
Well, I mean, I do get variants of this in terms of even excuses in that we are big or we are
Yeah.
at scale or we are regulated. There are nuances to why not, or all that transformation product model stuff is a startup thing,
Hmm.
or it's not for big companies in that way. And I even often have to ask companies when they say, "Oh, we are big." I say, "What kind of big are you talking about? Are you talking market cap big? Revenue big, number of employees big? Is it Apple big, Amazon big? I mean, you see,
Hmm.
these are companies that are even bigger than your company today that work this way. Well, we're regulated. It doesn't work well where there's regulation. And I say, no, you're not regulated. They say, what do you mean? I say, no, your industry is regulated. Like there's nobody that comes to play in your sandbox that says, I'm going to follow a different set of rules. If I
Hmm.
decide to be in healthcare or in financial services, the regulations apply to me. Are you suggesting that innovation doesn't happen in your industry? You
Hmm.
see, these are all these blockers in mental modeling that we've created over time, that many companies are kind of coming. to terms with. When I kind of tell a leader, when they're like, we're regulated, I say, this is why you need product management. They say, what do you mean? I say, because you're saying to me, we just can't do anything.
Hmm.
We have
Hmm.
to do things within regulations. There are constraints. Like if this was just about doing anything, then why don't anybody can just say do that? But you're saying I need somebody that understands the regulation, understands the people we're serving, and understands what we want, and trying to create a solution there. That's hard. So
Yeah, absolutely.
that's right. So I'm seeing industries. I mean, farmer coming into the product model, which is
Hmm.
interesting. Big banks coming into
Hmm.
the product model. Insurance. These are companies that I will not touch with a stick years ago. But I'm making significant strides into the product model. Now, the biggest driver, if you're a technology leader today, is this thing that we cannot not ignore, talking about AI.
Hmm. Go
Um,
on.
it is, if I am advising a head of technology today, I will challenge them to leverage this current wave of disruptive technology with AI to transform their organizations. I was just with a leadership session, and when there's big disruption like the internet, for it creates a point in time where your traditional the business people recognize something very interesting. Nobody's talking about us right now. There's a new player in the room that our customers are talking about, our competitors are talking about. Every executive room or table is like AI, AI, AI. And none of the executives there are the experts on it. The
Hmm.
experts exist in the technology group. It's the first time since the internet that there's a lean in into technology of like, so what are we going to do with this AI thing? And unfortunately, many companies react, respond, or create an AI project to try to
Because
AIify
they
their
love
work.
projects.
That's right, because they know projects. But what I've tried to coach many leaders now is this is a great catalyst
Hmm.
for your transformation. Because you're saying to your organization, there's an emerging technology that could be disruptive to our business because it may be disruptive to our customers, our ways of working, our models, our competitors, or stuff that we now have to leverage or understand how we use. What the product model does is it equips us to respond to that proactively in the future than being reactive as we are today.
Yep.
And so now that the business is leaning into you, they are elevating technology. At this point in time, they are bringing you to their conversations because you have an interesting thing they don't have the
Yeah.
knowledge of this AI thing. Deliver good outcomes. Because really, what the product shift transformation is, you're shifting from a subservient relationship to a collaborative one.
Yeah.
This is a
And
great reason to do it.
And I think you're actually striking at the heart of what companies actually want. Yes, they want more revenue, that solves everything. But actually, they want to grow and they want to outcompete their competitors. They want to grow faster than their competitors. There's no point saying to a company saying, you grew 5%, but actually the
Yes.
rest of the market grew 20%, right? They feel that they're underperforming, which
Yes.
is fair, right? Because everybody within the same industry, I mean, reasonably, has the same constraints, has the same
Right.
regulations, have the same
Right.
things blocking them. And AI is something that is bringing everybody forward. I don't know of a single type of company that hasn't had some sort of leg up that
That's
either they've
right.
taken advantage of or they could have taken advantage of. So it's one of these things going, yeah, you've got to operate within the space you have, but you're the one who either sidesteps and works over these challenges and works
Right.
around these constraints and picks up on these leading edges that bring you forward. And it's the product operating model that does that.
That's right. That's right.
There was a question in the chat actually. Dipayan asked or pointed out that he's been in a company where the founder and CEO wants to transform, but is held back due to a fear of conflict within the rest of the management team. Have you seen that one holding companies back before?
Uh, Typically not from the founder CEO.
Mm,
That's a different leadership thing that we need to address.
yeah.
Typically, like I'm the head of product, the head of engineering or head of whatever, and there's conflict with other people, like maybe the head of sales, head of operations, some other group. Finance is not funding people to solve problems. They want to fund projects, and that's why when I kind of said a company cares about what the CEO cares about,
Hmm.
if the CEO cares about this, uh, they are then kind of most other people fall in line because the escalation in most companies get all the way up. If you're saying we need to hire an engineer, then outsource the engineer, HR is like, no, we're going to outsource. The CEO can kind of say, no, I'm going to deal with the consequences of bringing that in-house as a CEO. So, but you can't deal with that with the head of product and the head of HR fighting themselves. So it's not as common. I'm not so, I'm sure it does happen. But if I were coaching a CEO on building the case, as an executive or a CEO in many companies, the same thing I'll say, do a test. Don't try to get the big bang adoption of your organization. You can pretty much say, you know what? Maybe even pick the AI thing. Say, you know what? We're going to try to drive more sales using AI. I'm going to carve out this little team here. It's not going to distract. I'm not going to change anybody's budgets. I'm not going to
Yeah.
change all the big things. You guys carry on. But I want to try this little product model thing. I'm going to put a bunch of people with good skills, product manager, design engineer. I'm going to give them a problem, give them some context and space. Let's see what comes out of it, right? And then I'm going to evangelize, bring that to my leaders like, oh my goodness, look at what they did. What if we had two teams doing this? What do you think? Who else wants to try? Yeah, I want to try. Okay, you try in your team. Now you're telling these stories, Now in your executive room, there are like three executives that have worked in the product model that are telling stories. Who wants to be left out?
Hmm.
You see? So there is something about winning hearts and minds that is at the root of transformation. Business transformation starts with individual transformation. So, I would challenge an executive to really understand the nature of change and winning hearts and minds there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, so doing a transformation, this feels like it's a classic. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, right?
Mm.
You make a small bit of change and then you keep it building and growing and growing. I mean, how do you protect against burnout yourself, your teams, the people around you, so that they've got the energy to see this thing through?
If anybody's wondering where I lost all my hair or where my gray hair comes from, it is exactly from transformation. In short, if you're going through a transformation and you're still all smiley without any of this gray hair or stress, I don't know if you're really walking it.
You're not transforming hard enough.
You're not transforming that, and it is unfortunate because while there is some aspect of this that is a corporate courage, the grind of a few to make a meaningful dent and impact. But we see this a whole lot with so many companies that have reaped the benefit
Hmm.
of transformation in their journey. It only takes you experiencing this once, meaning experiencing what it looks like to walk this way, the benefits of walking this way, for you to fight for it.
Yeah.
It is a tremendous amount of burnout if you do it as a project, because you are doing the impossible task of making the whole org transform right now in the manner you want at the same
Hmm.
time, than
Yeah.
if you're doing it iteratively, and through experiment and discovery. So you want to check yourself on that. You want to evangelize, share your wins, the stories of it, fuel
Share
you.
your wins. Yeah.
That's right. That when you share the little dent or impact in the world you're making, it fuels you enough and it also builds trust enough for the next thing you need to
Yeah.
do. So big piece of that. Yeah.
Excellent. That's really good advice, and I appreciate you sharing all this. Christian, one thing to leave us with: any further resources that we should be listening into? Tell us a little bit about your podcast and what else we
Yeah.
should be reading these days.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, my podcast goes behind the crafts. That's why I call it product therapy. I don't want to talk about frameworks and processes and so
Perfect.
many things here. I want to go what's behind the craft of product, like mindset and and dealing with difficult people and communication. And when I say all problems are people problems, I truly want to talk about how we coach through some of these
Mm,
things, things we've talked about like agency and politics. And, these are all real rooted aspects that affect our work. And I think will become even more prevalent in the world of generative AI in our work. If everybody is a good writer, if everybody is a good storyteller, a good analyst, you write all the business cases start to look the same, world class. How do you decide which one is good? How do you discern which one is good? So your product sense, your product taste, all of these things become important. Obviously our book transformed. covers objections. It covers some of these topics with politics. Empowered covers leadership in this environment. Those are probably two good resources based on the conversation we've had today. But by all means, follow us on svpg.com. We kind of have a blog. We write about these topics. The podcast is often a great place to start as well.
Perfect. Hey, that's a whole pile of really good resources for to follow up on. Absolutely. I love the work that you do. Love the writing that you've done, and love having you here sharing your stories today. This has been absolutely brilliant. So thank you, Christian.
Oh, it
Thanks
is
so
my
much for sharing
highest
your
honor.
stories.
Thank you.
And everybody say thank you very much to Christian. Just as a final point, we're going to be back here in early September talking about much more practical how to offload your PM busy work to AI so that you can spend more time in that discovery and customer facing and stakeholder facing space. What's good, what's bad, and what's ugly. So we're going to be talking about some of that. Come back, join us then. In the meantime, everybody have a fantastic summer, and we'll see you on the flip side. Christian,
Thank
thanks
you.
so much. Thanks
Thank you.
again.
Thank you. My
All right.
pleasure to be here. Thank you.